everyone. This is the Free American Press with your host, Alexander Horat. Today, we're going to be having three very special guests on the show, and that is David Morgan of the Morgan Report, Andy Schectman, the president of Miles Franklin, and Travis, the economic ninja. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
And the economic ninja is just doing audio today because his video isn't working. So, so I all wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the silver market, and I wanted to get your take. Andy has some pretty interesting information he wanted to share on why gold and silver's falling. So I would like to ask Andy what he thinks about the sell-off of gold and silver right now.
Well, first of all, thanks, Alex. And it's always good to be here with David and the Ninja. Awesome to be here with you guys this Sunday afternoon. In looking at a week ago, Monday, when the price of silver fell, there were some interesting revelations that came about. First of all, it's important to note, as has been reported repetitively, that no one in their right mind would ever sell $4 billion worth of gold in the middle of the evening on a weekend, Sunday night, when two of the largest Asian trading hubs, Singapore and Japan, were on vacation. And in what's called the access market, in between London close and New York open, basically, early morning, middle of the night, whatever you want to call it, the most inopportune time, price indiscriminate time to sell anything, let alone 2.3 or 2.4 million ounces of gold all at once. Now, this is what's called a drive-by shooting. It was done specifically to knock the price down. The price of gold was sitting very close to the 200-day moving average. And when you look at the 200-day moving average, and speaking in terms of technical analysis, when combined with momentum, on a very simplistic explanation, there's more involved, but an easy way to say it is that when combined with momentum, a violation in either direction of the 200-day moving average is often the delineation between bull and bear. If it goes up through the 200-day with strong momentum, it is a bull signal. If it falls through the 200-day with great momentum, it is a bear signal. This is just a simplistic way of looking at it. But in the realization that most of Wall Street is driven by technical analysis, and much of these the very large funds have algorithms that control their movements, and it's done in a very non-emotional way, where if you see violations of moving averages or technical resistance levels, very often the algorithms kick in and do the work for the trader. So in any case, when someone dumped $4 billion or 2.4 million ounces worth of gold in the middle of the night, as it knocked it through the 200-day moving average with strong momentum, before the traders even made it into their office Monday morning, most of them were sold out of their positions as the selling beget more selling, and all of these stops were triggered along the way. So it's important to note, first and foremost, it was orchestrated. Whoever dumped it, obviously some commercial banks, saw the price hovering at the 200-day, pushed it through the moving averages, which created more selling. Now, all that we really hear about in the mainstream, including Bloomberg and really the shoddy reporting that we see in the mainstream, is that gold sold off, and really nothing about the manner in which it did. But the interesting thing about the sell-off is that in looking at the Commitment of Traders report that came out a week ago Friday, what we saw was some very interesting things. So the commercial banks obviously were the orchestrators of pushing this down. But as it hit New York within, very, very quickly as it hit New York, down $100 on gold and $1 or $2 on silver, bam, it shot right back up about $40 in gold, 50 cents in silver, only about half as much as it fell. But that's short covering. And let me show you why I believe that's what happened. So the banks knew it was ripe to be pushed over the average, knew that 200-day, knew that that would trigger stops and that more selling would occur, and that they'd be able to cover some of their old stops or excuse me, their old shorts. And in looking at the Commitment Traders Report, we see that in the net short position in silver, as an example, for the commercial banks, fell by 12,321 contracts. That's 61.6 million ounces. So they push it down. The funds do all their work for them, driving it lower and lower and lower. And then they come in and cover 61.5 million ounces. And in gold, the total commercial net short position fell by 35,643 contracts. That's 3.56 million ounces of gold, of which the majority of it, 32,272 of the 35,643, were actually short covering, and 3,371 contracts were long trades. They went long, each contract representing 100 ounces of gold. So what you're seeing is broad daylight manipulating the price lower, having the funds push it even lower, and then coming in and covering. And I guess I would just like to say one really important thing. If you look since late last April in silver and in gold, when the price has started to drive down, what we have seen, in fact, is an increase, slight as it may be, but an increase in the total amount of gold and silver held in all known depositories, ETFs, and mutual funds, despite the fact that gold and silver have been driven lower. What you're seeing are people waking up to the fact that this is crap, and that the surroundings, the fundamentals would deem that doesn't matter what the price is doing, that this is a position that traders want to hang on to. And so normally when the price would get driven down like this, you'd see a bunch of selling, you'd see people moving out of their positions and switching to other asset classes, and you would see the commercial banks step on it even further. But what we've seen in this industry, just like the funds and the ETFs and the depositories you can see on Comex, the volume is insane. We have had nobody selling anything, and the volume in retail is off the charts. So I guess what I'd like to say is that price is a tool of misdirection, and the big money knows that, and they're doing it not only to create a perception of reality through price and through rhetoric, but also to cover their short positions, to which I believe they're trapped. There are 3 or 4 commercial banks that are wickedly short, that are hemorrhaging money. And I think maybe for the first time, the funds actually realize this. And they don't want to go really, really short or sell off their positions to enable these commercial banks to dig out. One of these days, the rubber is going to meet the road. And the commercial banks are going to have to either cover, or just like Bear Stearns did, have one of these spiritual moments that could actually push them out of business. So if there's anything bullish to find in the price of gold getting smashed by $100, remember, it came back up, and it came back up because the most influential, well-funded, and well-informed, and yet probably nefarious traders in the world, the commercial banks, went way out of their way to cover a tremendous amount of gold and silver. And that, in the end, to me, is very bullish, on top of the fact that all of the amount of gold and silver held out there in the funds and the ETFs, they're not dwindling, they're actually going up. This tells you that gold and silver are transitioning to strong hands. Something to be actually very optimistic about, and I'd love to hear what David has to say about that, because he's been in the silver game as long as anyone, and probably knows more than just about all of us combined. So David, what do you think about a price driven down where we see 61.5 million ounces of silver covered, and a tremendous amount of gold covered, almost 3 million ounces? Just like to hear your thought.
Really, Andy, there's not much I can add. I mean, I think you did an excellent job of explaining it. The access market, I call it the aftermarket. That's an old term, doesn't matter the term. I think just to emphasize what you have said is when you start seeing the price come back up, it's because the professionals and the algorithms really do most of the trading, as you stated, say that's it. We got to buy, because if we don't, it's going to keep going up. So they're covering their shorts to the best of their ability using the algorithms. I think the only comment I could really add to it, Andy, is, and this is perception, it's my take on it. I think somebody or some buddies of the big 4, big 8, the big traders, are massively short around the $28 level. And the reason I say that is that there's been so much defense of that level, technically, more than I've seen. And, I'm a thinking man, but I'm human, so I do have a gut feel for stuff. And certainly in the silver market, I always try to do it with more of my head than my gut, but nonetheless, I can't rule it out. The reason I say that is the response with massive buying around that level. And then with the commissioner coming out and saying they have to tamp it down.
Yeah.
Why do they have to tamp it down? And by the way, why don't they have to tamp down the corn market or the lumber market or the wheat market? Why do they have to tamp down the silver market? So we could go on a tangent there. I really don't want to. I want to kind of reel this in and not dominate this, but we created this channel. Alexander was doing some really great interviews, getting some good content, and we struck a deal where I said, could you please do the Morgan Millennial Minute, and basically set him free. So if I might steer this a little bit to, we're trying to get more and more millennials involved in the real reality of honest money, or the reality of the economic system. Let me put it that way. The economy is not the financial system. The financial system is a big, false circus charade as far as I'm concerned at this point. So the economy is what we do to produce wealth for everybody, be it foodstuffs or automobiles or housing or whatever. That's the economy. The financial markets are supposed to reflect the actual economy and haven't for years. So I'll take in the economic ninja has been very quiet, but I want everyone to comment on what are your thoughts about getting this message out to the millennials more and more. I mean, this is my main purpose in having this site. Of course, I want everybody to know it, but it seems like the younger generation is going to be passed the torch from us baby boomers that really gooned it. I mean, we had the opportunity to stand up and fight, and very few of us did. And now we're putting this burden of unbelievable debt onto the younger generation. So let me turn it back to the economic ninja. If you could take on that thread rather than the COT stuff, Travis.
Yeah, you know what? So first off, I love the COT numbers and hearing all about all this, because I think it is amazing revelation. And David, I'm glad that you brought up the millennials. First, because I'm actually doing a video. I'm working on a video right now about it, because I have so many friends that are millennials. And the one common thread that I hear from every single one of them, it's not about money and being rich. They just want to be happy. They grew up watching their parents go through the Great Recession, and they were too young at the time to fully understand what it was. But they've been jumping on the technology bandwagon more than probably. Well, I mean, obviously we have generations underneath them now, but they are learning so much at such a rapid pace that they're starting to learn how to. It sounds funny, but I think there's about to be a movement of almost taking it back, because they're voting with their pocketbooks. They're a completely different style of thinking. Anything compared to what we've, my generation or the boomers, they're totally different. They want a quality of life. They do not agree with the status quo, and to be honest with you, I see a lot of them not becoming exactly upset, but they're searching for answers, and it's picking up pace really fast. And I think the Wall Street silver movement, I'm watching comments from people that, it sounds funny, they'll say, hey guys, I'm only 16 years old here, or hey, I'm only 20 years old, but I just bought my first 4 ounces of silver, and then watching everybody dive in on top of them saying, congratulations, this is amazing, where did you buy, what do you know, and you could see the excitement building, and quite frankly, I think it's only starting.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I agree with that, Travis. I think you're right. And I think the main thing why these banks want to keep, gold and silver down is because they want to keep the inflation of the dollar to a minimum. That's why they're tamping down the corn market, for instance, and the silver market, all commodities, because if they know if commodities start rising, then their power with this fake money is going to be broken because their fake money is not going to be worth anything anymore. So I think that's really what their end game, their plan is. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about this, Travis, about what happened here with this massive company buying $50 million worth of gold bars to counter a black swan event. So I just wanted to see what you thought of this and why they are doing this.
You know, it's funny. I was on Wall Street Silver the other day talking about it. It's probably going to come out in a couple of days. And I look at this as being almost the Howard Stern of economics now, the shock jock style. We've seen it before in the past where I believe there are groups that like to put out a narrative to measure, and the Federal Reserve has done this before, to measure the response. And so they'll put something wild out there, and it usually comes in the form of a Fed governor speaking, not, you know, the head of the Fed. And they want to measure the response, how far it goes into social media, how long the news cycle lasts on it, things like that, to gauge the, let's say, the awareness of the common consumer. And here you have almost the most extreme. Not only do you have a corporation buying gold, and we've already seen this with MicroStrategies and with Tesla. But if you think about it, you know, MicroStrategies came out and started talking about buying gold. Then you saw Tesla talk about, they actually defined it as we are changing our company documents to say we want cryptocurrency, gold, and physical gold. So they actually talked about gold paper contracts and physical. So they defined it. Now you have the most extreme bulletin board coming out. It sounds funny. They're almost timed, you know, within 6 months of each other. And they're saying now, not only do we bought physical gold, but we are a data company. And oh yes, one of our largest clients is the CIA. If that doesn't wake people up, I don't know what will. In crypto, I used to say all the time, it's they say, why would you buy it? And I said, you know, the funniest thing, the only reason I started buying crypto was because all the wealthy people owned it. And so all I'm going to do is do what the wealthy people do, and hopefully someday I'll become wealthy. Well, now you have a great example of many companies coming right out and saying, we are hedging a falling dollar with physical gold. And now you can't get any more screaming loud, jumping up and down than what just happened. And so I think it's a great, essentially a clarion call. And, at the end, when this whole thing shakes out, and quite frankly, I'm not a guy that can call the top or the bottom ever, but I think we are very close. I mean, we're seeing hedge funds getting taken out that literally just lost more than Bear Stearns did in 2008, and they're trying to cover it up. So, like Andy was alluding to, or not alluding, straight up saying, there's a lot of money being lost right now in the system, and there are a lot of people that are jockeying money here and there. We've seen it between Fed, U.S. and Europe in the past, moving dollars and euros to people to try and hide something, and I think it's coming out.
Alex, let me add one thing to that real quick, please, because a lot of the things that you and I have talked about, Alex, and that I've talked about for the last year is, and I don't mean to go back to the Commitment of Traders report, but it's about this Palantir article. One of the things that's been very different this last year and a half has been the rise of a group on the Commitment of Traders report called the Others. And there's never been this third reportable group. For years, you would look at it and it would show the commercial banks and the speculators, the hedge funds. And the whole purpose of this Commitment of Traders report, the COT report, they call it, is to show the positioning of the largest traders on the commodity exchange. And forever, it would be the commercial banks like JP and Goldman versus the speculators. And one would go long, the other would go short. But over the last year and a half, we've seen the rise of this third group called the Others. And they are thought to be sovereign wealth funds mostly, and family offices. You're talking the most influential and wealthy private investors in the world. So you look at a company like Palantir, who buys 50 million in gold. Well, remember I told you that the commercial banks all covered when they drove the price down? There's one thing I forgot to mention. The Others came back in. Now, last year, the Others took 300 million ounces nearly in deliveries off of COMEX. That's almost a decade's worth of deliveries. And they took more gold off of COMEX than is found in the Bank of Japan's official reserves or the Bank of India. You're talking substantial deliveries going to this third group, taking it off of the exchange. Well, this last week when the price got smashed, here come the others, just like Palantir, and they purchased 26,541 long contracts in gold. That's 2.65 million ounces in gold. 5 times, well, you're talking what, almost $3 billion, $4 billion, $5 billion worth of gold. So, 10 times what Palantir bought. You're seeing big money, influential money is using this environment where price gets smashed down as cover to go out and buy at a subsidy real money. When the money that we call money, the currency that we call money, is being inflated away to ridiculous levels, where 40% of every dollar ever created in the history of the United States was done so last year. And the printing press hasn't stopped. It's heating back up with the infrastructure bill and another $3 trillion after that, and God only knows what else. But I guess what I'd like to say about Palantir or the others is that just like the central banks and the commercial banks before them over the last 3-4 years, the biggest money in the world is price indiscriminate. They don't care what the price is doing. Actually, they're probably involved in holding it down so that they can accumulate physical. That's the key. It is classic misdirection. Don't look at the price, or don't look over here because the price is getting smashed. You look over there at the equities that are going to the moon, and the bull market at 35-year highs, the bond market at 35-year highs, and cryptocurrencies going to the moon. Don't worry about the precious metals that are getting hammered. But as that happens, the biggest, most influential, well-informed money in the world, even a company whose biggest client is the CIA, is accumulating physical. And that's what I take away from all of this.
Yeah, I agree. So do we have any idea who the others are Andy, officially? Or do they keep that?
The Commitment to Traders report does not disclose identities. They're believed to be sovereign wealth funds and family offices. And most of them trade on what's called the Globex market. The Globex market is usually reserved for very, very, very wealthy people, and it hides it aids in anonymity. Really, it's very difficult to say who they are, but suffice it to say they're very influential and very wealthy private investors.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this company buying $50 million worth of gold, David?
I can't really add. It's obviously a clear signal. I mean, you've had it happen in the past where you've had like a teacher's fund come out and buy physical gold. I mean, what's going to happen, and it's not me saying this, it's, the Jim Sinclairs and, many others in the gold silver space. But these pension funds are underfunded, and there's so many things that are wrong with the system. So let me start over a little bit. You've got retirements that will not be met, pension funds that won't be met, Social Security is in trouble. So there's all these debt obligations, either in the government sector or the private sector, that are absolutely, totally, completely insolvent. They're broke. They cannot meet their commitments. And about the only way that they might be able to is to buy something of historic value or cryptos. I won't say that wouldn't work. And then the repricing mechanism of that asset class or classes will reprice and basically bail them out. But the last thing that the banks want to do at this point in time, for my opinion, is pull the trigger and say, we're going to reprice gold at pick a number. Use 10,000 an ounce, use 15, use, I don't care. It's got to be high enough to reliquify the system, where these debts that are pretty much required, I would say, Social Security. I mean, who wants to, stand up in front of the American people and say, you have had your wages confiscated for the last 30, 35, 40 years, and we're going to pay you back in this currency. The pictures look the same on these pieces of paper, but your entire Social Security check pays half of your light bill now. Who's going to stand up there and do that? I don't think anyone will admit that. So there's a situation where more and more open information's coming to us all saying even the big boys are starting to move into an asset class that's proven for the test of time. One thing about gold versus crypto is it's immutable. I mean, gold's eternal. I mean, you know, a gold coin found from the Roman times is still there. I don't want to diss crypto. I'm not as bullish on it as some. I'm free market. If you want Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, I put Ethereum in the Morgan report. So, you know, I want to be a hypocrite. I think, in fact, I think it's a good call. It may turn out to be one of the best calls we made. I don't know. What I do know is that the only money that I know of that's indestructible are the precious metals.
Yeah, I
Just to add
agree.
what it said, Alex, real quick, just to put an exclamation point. According to the U.S. government's own financial report, the long-term unfunded pension liability just for Social Security, this is for you, Alex, because it ain't going to be there when you're our age, is $55.9 trillion underfunded. Now remember, a trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago. It is nearly $56 trillion unfunded, filled with a whole basket full of IOUs. So what David is saying is exactly spot on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the most important thing too is that if we look at the differences between gold and say cryptos and fiat money, is that gold and silver is actually real. It's actually real. And I think that's the most important thing. Fiat money's fake, it's worthless pieces of paper, and cryptos are just something, you know, online. So that's kind of why I like gold and silver the best, because they're actually real, like you can hold it in your hand. So I wanted to share uh, the screen and show this article written by David Morgan that I thought was interesting. And I wanted to ask David if he could tell the audience a little bit about it. And yes.
Sure. So this is a recent interview I did a couple days ago, and it's talking about what we in the metals community always talk about: if you can't hold it, you don't own it. And it came out of that idea. I added on to it, but the whole theme came from this little booklet written by Jerome Smith, who was the silver guru back in the 70s. He wrote several books on the economy and silver and gold and constitutional money and a lot of things. And in this book, he talks about the three theories of money, and then he proposes one called the ownership theory of money. And the more I pondered it, the more I thought, you know, this is a very interesting topic to bring to the public's attention, because I've been very concerned about the fact that you no longer can have a bailout. It's illegal to do a bailout in the United States. There can only be a bail-in. And what if you can't touch it, you don't own it? Now, I'm not saying that's exactly the case. I said it was a theory, but in the theoretical, there's only about $1 for every 20 in obligations in physical form. So if everyone went to the bank and got their money, it'd be a bank run. And the bank run, of course, is the worst thing to happen to a bank, because it absolutely proves the Ponzi to every living being that has a bank account in that country, or in this case, it could be worldwide. We don't really know. So that was kind of the premise of it. I could go on and on. You can listen to the interview. Please get on my free email list. I mean, the price is right. It's free. The reason I'm asking you to do that is I had a subset that was going to go into this description you just posted up, Alex, and I didn't get it done in time. My webmaster got it done about 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes before this interview. So I'll be sending that out to my free list over the next week. There's 4 videos that I want to highlight, and a little article about why I think as things progress, the direction, the trend that they're on, that it's possible. I'm not predicting this exactly. I'm just saying what the trend is, as it becomes more and more critical of how we steward our energy resources to produce what's needed, like food, that in the metals complex, you could see where so much energy is required to produce an ounce of gold and a lot less energy is used to produce an ounce of silver. Silver is absolutely critical for modern society, that you could see a degradation when you have to make that choice. For example, XYZ Mining, that's a conglomerate, has, 2 gold mines, a lead zinc mine, and a silver mine. Well, they actually start funding just the lead, zinc, and silver mine and put the gold mine on hold. Why? It's an economic situation. It's actually not that hard a decision. So that's the trend I'm seeing. I'm usually a little ahead of the curve, and I usually am a little early when I make my calls. But as the old adage goes, maybe Andy could say it better than me, but I'd rather be 6 months too late or it's too early than 6 minutes too late.
That's the truth, David.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good because I think physical cash, we're becoming, almost a cashless society. And if, electricity doesn't work or any other unforeseen disaster, well, you're not going to have any real money at your disposal. So I think you give a really good point to that. And I think that's pretty important. So I want to share my screen again really quick to show this a little bit. So we all know what's been going on in Afghanistan and everything there, how we've been fighting there for over 20 years and just left the country. So this is basically a map of where all the bases that the United States, all the military bases that the United States has. So they're all over the world, especially in Europe and Northern Africa. So one thing that I found pretty interesting was how the Roman Empire fell, and that was due to a lot of unforeseen things, but basically problems with the economy, for instance, and also these endless wars. Actually, I just want to share the screen again to show this. Overexpansion and military spending. So I think it seems like we're kind of in the same thing right now, the United States, in some way. So I wanted to get the economic ninja's view on this and what he thought of us leaving Afghanistan now. And yes.
Oh man, you give me that one, huh? I'm joking. You know what? Let me start with this, and I'm going to tie it into actually the different generations of what David was talking about. First off, I think this is happening so fast. This news story, it's very hard to comment on it because it is evolving fast and furious. And I don't even want to use that comment as I wasn't even going to play on words. What I think is we always try and look at the positive side of things because there are some horrendous things happening right now over in Afghanistan. And me and Andy did a video on Belt and Road, and there's definitely ties to Afghanistan and Belt and Road, and that's a whole nother video. But I want to bring up what David talked about the importance of getting this information out to millennials and actually even Gen Z. We talk about millennials a lot, and they're extremely vital. But Gen Z, which Alexander, you're a part of, are watching this live. And they're smart people, a smart demographic that are using logic right now to go, this doesn't make sense. Why would we fight for this long to secure this area and just get up and leave? And what's happening right now is I like to go to my subscriber base and hear from people that are younger, that are waking up to the realities of real assets, real truth, real news. And we're watching things literally crumbling before our eyes. A lot of us say, and I mean it, this is the greatest time to be alive, because as crazy as it gets, it means there's more and more opportunities to be successful and to make a difference in this world. Now, I'm going to go off on a tangent, and I apologize for that, Alex, because this is a very hard topic to talk about, what's happening to the people in Afghanistan. But I started to teach my children and their friends the realities of real tangible wealth by showing them, and this was years ago, how important it was to save up for a real gold chain. It sounds funny as you're going, how am I going to tie this in? And I started to share with them what it was like to own something real, not something that's fake, like a derivative, explaining how stocks work and all that stuff, but something that is real and tangible. And that I explained it to them. And this is when it clicked with all of them. You are going to be buying something that none of your friends own, and especially none of your friends understand its importance. So they all went out and saved up their Christmas money and their birthday monies. And literally, my son's friends went out and bought gold chains and gold little, medallions for their chains. And literally, I don't know how it happened, but everyone around them started wearing fake gold chains. And it's a fad now. These kids are running around with these fake gold chains, and it's almost like we're watching Mr. T running around these days, and it's a fashion statement. And I lean over to my children's friends, and I say, and this isn't a bragging thing. You don't talk about it, but with our circle, I say, now look, these kids, this is something fancy, right? And one of the kids I noticed came up to one of my children's friends and said, "Why is your chain so small?" And his answer, it was so funny, it was so fast. He goes, "Why is yours not real?" And it sounds funny, but I think it's a very powerful message. And I'm glad, David, that you've teamed up with Alex to do this, because not only millennials, we've been advertising's pushed out the word millennials so much in the last 5 years that we're just sort of used to millennials. But I think, honestly, not only are they going to make a difference, but Gen Z is, I think, going to come roaring out into an amazing understanding and knowledge of what we're talking about right here. And to give you an idea of demographics, Gen Z is actually larger right now. It makes up a quarter of the U.S. population and accounts for 40% of all consumers. Last year, they spent $143 billion. And that is absolutely, and I think, Alex, you have an opportunity here to speak into the millennials, but also Generation Z. I've been watching your videos. I went back and looked at how long you've been doing this. I'm so excited for you. Alex, I'm going to tell you right now, a year ago, if you would have ever asked me if I'd be on a Zoom call or a Skype call with Andy and David, I would have just laughed. You know what I mean? And that shows the pure power of something you've done. And quite frankly, that's absolutely amazing. You reached out to all of us, which is telling all of your followers that I don't care how old you are, I don't care where you live, your sex, race, anything. If you want to make a difference, you can make a difference. So sorry for going off on a tangent, guys, but I'm getting super excited for things like this.
Let me add one thing here, just about Afghanistan, and then I want to make one mention about David Morgan. It's reported that the U.S. was spending $134 million a day for 20 years. Now talk about wastefulness. And what did it get us but an embarrassment of riches? And I mean, it's I'm being tongue in cheek. I'm being facetious. It's been a horrible thing. Loss of life, loss of resources, and to what gain? It's maybe emblematic of where we are at this stage. As far as the comments about David working with you, most people don't know this, but David gave me my first shot at public speaking. And David and I used to speak together almost 20 years ago, all around the country. And I will forever appreciate David and respect him as a friend forever. And it's because of that I have always wanted to pay it forward. That's why when you called me as a 17-year-old working the hustle here from home, I was honored to say I would do this with you every week. And I didn't even know that you were doing the Millennial Minute with David. David, I say this to you because I will forever be grateful and I forever pay it forward. And it's an honor to try to impart the things that you taught me and that I've learned over 31 years to a fantastic young man like Alex. And Alex, I think you don't even have any idea the potential impact that you're making and to where this road will take you. Because when I look back, when I was, just starting in this industry as a 19-year-old, I would have never in my wildest dreams thought I'd end up here. But what you're doing is really important, and it's something that I'm really proud and honored to be part of. And David started the ball rolling, and he's true to his convictions almost 20 years later working with you. So kudos to you both, and thank you to you both.
Yeah.
Hey, can I jump in real quick? Let me jump in real quick too. And David doesn't know we're doing this, but David actually is the first celebrity in the precious metals YouTube space that actually reached. I reached out to him, and he was patient and kind and listened to me as well. And I can't even describe the confidence he gave me. And I want to be able to push your work, Alex. And so I need to get me your links and what you guys are planning on doing, because yeah, I am so grateful to David's work. He's taught me so much since 2010 when I started investing and reading about silver and gold. And I just can't thank you guys enough.
Thank you, David and Andy, and you too, Travis. Yeah, it's really awesome what you guys are doing. And I think you're really doing something good to actually, help and educate, the people of the United States and the world. So I just wanted to get into one more quick topic really quick, because I thought it was pretty interesting, because my friend was talking a little bit. He's from Japan, and he was saying the reason why we're getting out of Afghanistan is because we're moving our troops to Taiwan. And he was talking a little bit about this, and hasn't really been getting too much media coverage. So I wondered what you guys thought of this going on, and if this could get the waters warmer with China. Unfortunately, yeah. So whoever wants to
Be the dumbest thing that we could possibly ever do, period, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So why do you think the United States is moving all these troops to Taiwan right now?
Why? Because I have no idea why. I think to get in a war or into a conflict with China would be the dumbest thing we could possibly do on just about every level. Not only could they dump all of their treasuries and really just crush the U.S. dollar and blow up interest rates and crush all the markets that are all inversely correlated to a rise in interest rates, stocks, bonds, and real estate. But you're dealing with a superpower, and one that looks at Taiwan as theirs. It would be as if Hawaii wanted to declare independence, and another army came, and the Chinese army came and defended Hawaii against us. It would be about the dumbest thing the United States could do. The best thing that we could do would be to close all our military bases, get the hell out of everyone's business, and come back here and protect our own country and protect our borders. And think what $134 million a day for 20 years would have done to our infrastructure. Our thinking is so backwards. We think we're the policemen of the world. It's as we can see, it did a whole lot of no good. And if I were Taiwan, I certainly wouldn't feel warm and fuzzy looking how the U.S. left everything and everyone there, in many respects, high and dry.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think Taiwan is an independent country, but even if it is, it doesn't mean we need to get involved with a war in the East that we're not have anything to do with. So, what's your thoughts on this, David?
Oh, I'm the last one to speak on this topic. I mean, I'm a pacifist at heart, and really don't stay up on the war cycle too much. David Smith, that works with me, he's very keen on this type of topic. I agree with the summary that Andy gave for the most part. What worries me is, of course, you got to get the economic picture in there. And of course, Taiwan is responsible for most of the semiconductor industry. And they work in more or less a free state condition, whereas the CCP that does more or less own them, either in name or in fact, wants to rule them the same way they rule the mainland. And it's my understanding, having some Chinese friends with their parents in Taiwan, that they do have a lot more freedom than the mainland does. And who wants to give that up? And of course, we're giving it up now. So I go on and not make much sense. It concerns me a great deal. You know, the worst thing in a war is nobody really wins. I think that the Monroe Doctrine, which is what Andy alluded to, is that we stay at home. We don't involve ourselves in foreign wars. You know, I think that's a good practice, but it's obviously not been the principal element that we've had in our military since the petrodollar was started. Basically, our bases built around the world that you showed earlier on has to do with putting our currency as the reserve currency of the world, backed by nothing but the end of a gun, if you want to get really critical about it. I mean, Harry Brown, who I greatly respect, probably mentored me as well as anyone, said government is force. And boy, when I first heard that out of his mouth, I didn't really like it. But the more I stayed calm and really examined what he was saying, he's correct. Government forces you to do something you might not necessarily do on your own. And of course, that force goes outside of the continental United States, all over the world, as you showed, to make certain that we remain the top dog. And yet, as you showed, Alex, with what happened in the Roman Empire, and I've made that analogy basically from the first lecture I ever gave, that we are toppling. The end of empire is here. And it's accelerating to the downside now. We know that because of the censorship. It's only when the ruling class has to basically take away our freedoms, our free speech, and we can't speak against the truth, which is the most mighty, powerful thing that we have as a collective, regardless of our political affiliations. I don't have any, really. I mean, I could call myself libertarian. It's not totally accurate, but regardless, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is that freedom is cherished by all peoples everywhere and always. And we start to surrender those. There is no amount of gold or silver that can give you freedom. And the whole idea of financial freedom is freedom. It's not how big a pile you've got, because I don't need as big a pile as Andy does, or maybe I need a bigger one. I don't know. That's an individual thing. It's about freedom. It's not about how many ounces I collected. And this is something I think that's overlooked by my generation more so than the millennials and Generation Z, as the ninja so aptly pointed out. There is no price for freedom. It's priceless. There is no amount of gold that we would be willing to give to get out of a prison, as an example, as a thought experiment. So that's where one of these videos that I did that I'm going to put out on my free list talks about the silver market initially, and then I step it up and I even get more excited because I start talking about what I just said. When you boil it down, it's not about gold and silver in a way. It's the philosophical reach behind it, meaning you get to choose the best money, just like you get to choose the best meal or the best house or whatever that you can afford. And if you don't have the freedom to do that, then what's the point, really? I mean, you're basically a slave. I'll go one step further, of course, piss off all the, let's say, some of the other political slants. But, at what point do you become a slave? If you're taxed at 100%, are you a slave? Well, if you're taxed at 50%, are you half a slave? I mean, you got to think about these type of esoteric questions from your generation, because if we're going to build back, we have to build back with we the people, not with a financial overlord going to a feudal system, which is exactly what they're pushing on us. So I took off from Taiwan and got all the way over to a feudal system. So I will quiet down, and maybe the EN, the economic ninja, can put some color into that.
Okay, I'll try. So, it's interesting because there's a difference between a hot war and jawboning and saber rattling. And I always like to use the analogy of a good magician. All they have to do is get you looking somewhere else while their hands are actually doing the trick. And the facts are, is we just don't know, if anything's going to happen. But the first thing the War College will teach you, and I know it's from a general friend of mine, is that you position yourself. When you position yourself, you're doing a couple different things. And right now, that's what we're doing. We're positioning in Taiwan, in a region of the world, and we're not paying attention to what's really happening. That is a key portion of the world that a major trade route needs to be built in is now essentially protected. Now, this could all change tomorrow. Quite frankly, the next administration could change this. We just don't know yet. But I like to look at the stuff that's off to the side. And then to touch on what David spoke about, it is absolutely about freedom. And I went to a poker game last night, and I actually sort of lost my cool a little bit because nobody wanted to talk about real things. It's all about, a $20 poker game, and you know, and everybody's kids going to sports, and I'm like, you guys don't even understand how real things are getting. And the thing is, you know, for some of us that got to see the '08 crisis happen before anyone knew about it, and watching a slow burning collapse happen, and that was a great recession. The things we're talking about today are, quite frankly, people say doom and gloom. Well, it's because it's true. The system is coming apart. The wars are only happening to defend a currency, and that's what all wars are about: power and authority. But to add some color to this, what you guys are doing with the millennial report and talking to younger generations, we have the opportunity right now that I don't think we have ever had in history, because of the invention of something like YouTube, social media, to be able to speak truth into the younger generations and allow them to vote with their finances. And like David said, freedom is the ultimate, but really what it comes down to is, what are you able, freedom comes at a cost. And sometimes that is the cost of how you spend your money and what you're able to buy with it. And sometimes it's the ultimate price of your life. And so that is actually, ironically, the positive message, is the doom and gloom, because we're able to bring truth where there isn't. And people like, you know, Greg Hunter and people that have been banned before us, that are trying to bring the truth. Andy trying to wake people up to the COT reports, the numbers behind the scenes. I think this is, quite frankly, the most exciting time to be alive, guys. And I'm just so happy to know you all.
Likewise.
Yeah, same with me, and I just really have to thank you all for being on the show, and I would like to share everybody's. So here is the Morgan report. This is where you can find it. David Morgan's site, themorganreport.com. So here's his site, how you can find it, and I'd also like to show Andy Schectman's site. It's Miles Franklin. I'm going to share the screen really quick.
And you know, Alex, any of your listeners contact me by email at Andy@MilesFranklin and put the Free American Press in the subject line. They have my word, they will get the best price in America. You have my word on that, your listeners do. And the least I can do for someone like you, who is trailblazing the way for a generation of people that, as the other guys have said, will be the bearers of the torch when they get passed on. And let's just hope the old adage, you know, the more things change, the more they actually stay the same, and that people, even though we live in a different world, a changing world, will realize the importance of gold and silver as being wealth, not as an investment. Because you go back all the way to the Bible, beginning of time, and move forward, anyone of wealth and nobility, kings, queens, emperors, pharaohs, they all owned gold, and not from a gold broker, and not as an investment, but as a form of immutable wealth, as David said, immutable, that can, in the year 3000, Alex, when your great, great, great grandchildren are using the coins that you passed on to them, will still have wealth, will still have value. So anyways, any of your listeners, reach out to me, and best price in the country, and I will personally work with them and answer their questions long before we even do any business. So thanks for having me again today, Alex. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, and thank you too, Andy. And here's the Economic Ninja site, and he's actually going to be having a conference with Andy Schectman and David Morgan. Travis, could you tell the viewers a little bit about that?
Yeah, we had that post on it. It's going to be in Dallas at the end of March, and around December, we're going to start putting out a lot of information on it. We're going to have a great lineup of speakers. It's going to be fun. It's going to be, I guarantee you one thing, it will be like unlike any conference you've ever been to. I'm sure David can back it up. My sense of humor is a little different. But hey, you know what? If you don't mind me saying, I'm going to be up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho at the Silver Symposium with David. It's free to attend. So if anybody would like, if they're in the Idaho area or Spokane, anywhere, and want to come and see us speak, I'm going to be emceeing the event. I don't know if David realizes what he got himself into and he asked me, but man, am I excited and nervous.
What day is that going to be on?
I don't have David. You
September 27th and September 28th, the end of September. It's
Okay.
at the Coeur d'Alene Resort in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, Silver Symposium. And it's the first live event for silver in quite some time, actually, in a few years. I mean, I have to shout out, I guess, to Cambridge House and the original founders of the original Silver Summit, Shauna Hillman and David Bond. David's left us, but I met with Shauna just a few days ago to put more meat on the bone, so to speak, on this symposium. And I actually did cut a little video ad for it, but it should be quite exciting. And I think it'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people to see the economic ninja live and on stage. So I think a lot of us are looking forward toward doing that event.
Yeah, that sounds pretty awesome, and I hope all the viewers can attend.
Wish I could be there with you guys, but I'm speaking at a family office event in Arizona at the Talking Stick Hotel that same weekend. Next time I'll be there.
Well, that sounds good, and I would like to thank you all for being on the show, and I hope you all can come on again soon.
We will indeed. I'll see you next week, Friday, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers who are watching. God bless.
God bless you all.